Welcome, my friend, to Still Point 1210, a midweek pause for peace, presence, and renewal. Wherever you are today, whatever kind of day you are having, I invite you to arrive gently. You do not have to force calm. You do not have to have everything figured out. You do not even have to feel spiritual in this movement. You only have to pause. Just before we begin, I would like to invite you to take a moment to subscribe to this channel on YouTube, follow on Facebook, and share this still point moment with someone who may need just a few minutes of peace today. Sometimes a simple pause shared at the right moment can become a blessing in someone else's day. As we begin, this is a gentle practice meant to support awareness and calm. It is not intended to replace medical or mental health care. Now let's take a breath together and come back to the still point within. Still point breathing is not just a pause from life, it's a practice of coming back to yourself, calming the alarm system, receiving a steadier rhythm, and returning to the world with a new pathway being strengthened. So let's begin. Place one hand gently over your heart and let this be an anchor, a simple signal to your body that you are here. Relax your jaw. Let your shoulders soften. Let your feet feel the ground. This, my friend, is attunement. Your attention is turning inward. Your brain is beginning to notice the body, the breath, and the present moment. Take a slow breath in and pause at the top of the inhale and silently say, I am here. Now breathe out slowly and pause at the end of the exhale. And my friend, that pause matters. It gives the nervous system time to receive the message. I do not have to rush. I do not have to brace. Again, breathe in, pause. I am here. Breathe out, pause, and I release. With the longer exhale, the vagus nerve is gently invited into regulation. The body begins to shift out of alarm. The amygdala, the brain's threat detector, can begin to quiet. Again, just breathe in slowly and pause and breathe it out slowly and pause, silently saying, I can soften. Breathing in again. Pause. Breathe out. And pause. I can soften. Now we receive. As the breath steadies, the heart, brain, and nervous system begin to find a more coherent rhythm. Not perfect calm, not forced peace, just a little more steadiness. And breathe in, counting in 4, 3, 2, 1, pausing, 2, 3, and breathing out, 1, 2, 3, 4, pausing, 2, 3, and saying silently, I receive steadiness. Breathing in and pause and receive the steadiness as you breathe out. And pausing. Each time we repeat these words, we are given the brain a pathway to practice. This, my friend, is neuroplasticity, the brain learning a new way to return. And now we return. One more slow breath in and pause and breathing out slowly. And pause. And silently saying, I return, blessed and thankful. And continue just this breathing in and out as you flow. Do this at a steady rhythm, that which gives you life and breath and love. There was a young boy that when he went to school, one of the tasks that he was to do was to come home and ask his parents where he came from. And so I came into the kitchen and his mum was doing some dishes, and so he walked up to her and he said, Mommy, what's my heritage? Where am I from, right? How does that work? And the mother said, well, our parents are Scottish. And they've come over from Scotland a number of years ago, probably from the 1920s, 30s. It's been a long history of great, 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 and great, 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 great aunts and uncles and grandmas and grandpas and everything like that. You have a long lineage of very Scottish Canadian people. You're Canadian now. That's your heritage. And he says, that's great, Mum, thanks. And then he sees Dad sitting in the living room, and he's got a paper up, and he says, Dad, I was supposed to ask you what our heritage is, where we're from, that kind of stuff. And so the dad put his paper down, and he said, okay, well, it's like this. We were little amoebas in the water at one point, and then we came upright, and then we walked, and we were like monkeys and stuff, and then we became human. And the kid goes, oh, okay, that's great. Goes back into the kitchen to ask the authority. Goes back into the kitchen and says, Mom, Dad says we come from these little things from the water and monkeys. And she says, well, that's your father's side of the family. Yes. Got my mother-in-law here. Yes, that was, no. Not meant that you, no. This morning, as a matter of fact, I better turn this on. As I promised you, we're going to talk a little bit about Saul. Saul is a really interesting person, and some of us like him, some of us, love him. Some of us are kind of, what's he doing here, right? So today I thought that I would share with you why we believe that Paul is someone called by God, called by Christ, to lead and to be part of that. And so, as we, by the lifting, it just does that every once in a while to make me go, oh. So, Saul is a Pharisee, and he's been taught by Gamaliel, who is a Pharisee of great standing, educator. And so he has had a long history of training and of learning, and he's a Pharisee. He has come from Tarsus, and so we know that he is Jewish because he's a Pharisee. And he has come to the high priest, and in coming to the high priest, he is asking for a letter. Specifically, this letter is to be able to condone Christians, to be able to persecute Christians, and unfortunately, he thinks that that means that even to take someone's life. As he looks out at us, as I see this image, and Stephen, do you see him standing in the white? As Saul looks out at us, I see eyes that are piercing. And I see a man that is very confident in the fact that he is called. And that he has been called by the Jewish Sanhedrins from the Pharisees to go out and to banish the people like Stephen who are Christians. Now Stephen, as you can see in the back of there, is actually talking. He's sharing the news and the love of God through Christ Jesus. He's sharing his story. And if you watch, Saul, who is Paul, is holding the coats of the ones that are going to stone Stephen. He does nothing to stop it. As a matter of fact, he thinks it's his right to do so. It's not knowledge that's a problem. What what is the problem? Is the person that thinks that they're always right. That it's okay to be right, but if you think you're right to the elimination of listening to others, then I don't think that you're open to being receiving. Again, someone that thinks they're right all the time, that's okay. But we also have these ears. We're to listen and to live through this hope. So Paul has been part of this. This is Paul's ordinary life. This is who Paul is. Paul doesn't think there's a problem. Paul has been raised to believe this way. And because Jesus was crucified, his followers, the Christians, were to be stoned, were to be even crucified, were to be treated as foreigners. They were not Jewish. Now this is, my friends, called a hero's journey. Has anyone heard of this before? Well, Joseph Campbell has set out, and many of our hero stories come as the hero's journey. I'm going to do a little short one of this, but I believe that this isn't a hero's journey. I think it's very sacred. And I don't think it's just Paul's journey that is sacred. I believe it's everyone's journey that is very sacred. And so we go on with Paul. And what happens on this journey in our ordinary life, somehow it's interrupted. Somehow something happens that changes us. And what was that happened to Paul? He saw the light. And then he was blinded. And he fell to the ground and could not see. And with his people, they had to help him on his way to Damascus. But he could not do this by himself. His followers came and they helped him to get to Damascus. And when Lynn read, she also told us there was someone else that helped him as well, that was called by Christ to go to Damascus and to clear his eyes, to help him to see again. And that was Ananias. Ananias went on his trip to see Paul, Saul, and he was transformed. Now, I always thought Saul became Paul and Saul was no more. But because our Bible is talking to the Gentiles, to Christians, he goes by his Roman name, Paul. But Paul still is Saul. And even in the transformation, Saul and Paul remain as Jewish followers. And so the Christians in that day were trying to figure out, how did Jesus fit into their Jewish way of being? They wanted to teach if Jesus was actually the Messiah. And that's what he went on to do. He was transformed. He became humble. He began listening, not being a know-it-all. He sat and he listened to them speak. And that became his call. He was called to go share the good news to the Gentiles. So what he was doing in his Jewish faith was adapting Jesus in there as the Messiah, and that's why he thought it was the end days. So Paul brings in Jesus into this message, and that, my friends, is what he is called to. So we have him on the road. He sees a bright light, and he falls down. Now, this is in Acts 1:9, 1-19. It's also in Acts 23, and it's Acts 23, let me get this right, it's 3-21, and it's also in Acts 26. So there are 3 stories of his conversion. And I'm going to fix that for you. It's not really a conversion, is it? Because he didn't really become fully Christian. He also held his Jewish heritage there. So he has fallen. But if you look into, here he is, he sees this bright light. If you look at Acts 9, they don't see it. If you look at Acts 23, they see it. If you look at Acts 26, they don't see it. If you read his call that he wrote in Galatians, he didn't share that they saw it. So that's how this bright light unfolds. Then they hear a voice from heaven. Do all of them? We're not really sure. We know that in 22, in the very first one, Acts 9, they hear it. They hear the voice. They understand that voice is calling. But in Acts 22, they don't. As well as Acts 26, they don't. And in Galatians, they don't. We come to, is he blinded and he could not see? Acts 9, Acts 22, yep, he was blinded. The other two don't say that. And now we have Ananias, and Ananias is both in 9 and 22, but not 26 or Galatians. So Ananias has come. Was he baptized? Yep, 9 and 22 tell us he was. 26, Acts 26, and Galatians don't mention it. Did Jesus commission him to go forward, to go out and share the good news? Well, in Acts 9, as he sits there, he hears the voice say, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Why are you persecuting me? This is Jesus. And he receives it at that point. Oops, sorry. Oh, sorry. That was to be the next commercial, the next piece to get you to laugh. Isn't she adorable? Hold on. Let's go back to the real reason. Hold on. And so Jesus has given him this order when he fell upon the ground. But in 26 and in Galatians, he says that he was commissioned not by any of his disciples, Peter or James or any of them. But in Acts 9 and 22, Peter and James help him out a wee bit. Why would this be that there are so many differences? I've shared with you the differences that flow through the Gospels themselves. Here's the thing, my friends. We are reading in the Gospels as narration and as he's talking to other people. And in Acts 26, he's actually talking to King Agrippa, who is Jewish, and he's trying to convert him to be a Christian. And so he doesn't want to tell him all these other things. He wants to tell him that his authority was given to him in the temple. And that's what he says. Do I question his authority? No. Later in 22, it says that he went to Jerusalem. And he spent 15 days with Peter and with James. My friends, this is good news. Good news that Paul has brought to us this day. Does it matter that there are some differences? No, of course not. Different audience, different way of writing. And guess what? If I actually said to you that I had a breakdown in my car and I had to pull over to the side of the road and I was so scared and I had to call to get a tow truck to come and get me, and my daughter Michaela's with me too, and I say, well, you know, we had this breakdown, we had to call the tow truck, you know, it seemed to be like 20 minutes, and then Michaela says, oh my gosh, she can't drive. It took her an hour for them to come. I had to sit in the car with her that whole time. Right? Different versions, but guess what? There's harmony there. The car broke down. We needed to get towed. That's the important part of that story. And the important part of Paul's story is that he was blind, and now he sees. And he didn't just take it out to the Jewish people to convert them. He went to the Gentiles. That, my friends, was never done. Was never done. And in future, I'll tell you about the churches that he establishes. I have no idea why I put that there, but I thought it might wake you up a little bit and smile. Come on now, let's move around a little bit. Wake up. That was a lot about that, wasn't it? I'd like to share with you another, it's not a hero story, it's a sacred story. And my friends, it's your story too. Because each of us have had lives that are interrupted. Each of us has had something that has changed us, that has called us, that has made us perhaps a little bit different than we were. Perhaps it's when you had grandchildren. Woohoo, right? We're different. It interrupted your life, but it also transformed you into a grandmother or a grandfather, into a mother or a father. Perhaps you're retired, And so you had to transform in that time to something that really kind of suits you, because you're not going 8 hours a day to a job. You're being transformed, being changed. For me, my ordinary life at one point was with Malachi. Yeah, Doug's important too. With Malachi. And Malachi and I spent a lot of time at the barn. I was a preacher at the time. That was my life. That was ordinary for me, to go down to the barn with Doug a couple times a day to do that. But my life was interrupted. My life was interrupted when I fell and had that accident. And you know that well about not wearing a helmet. I thought I'd show you a picture of me actually wearing one. Yes. But that accident changed my life, interrupted my life. And you see, when it interrupted my life, I was on a journey to be an ordained minister. Guess what happened? It stopped. Stopped completely. Because I couldn't go on. I couldn't do the studies. I couldn't do anything that they were asking me to do. And one day, Doug came home with a registered letter that said that I had been released from the path because I could not go on. And I turned to Doug in that moment and I said, even God doesn't want me. Even God doesn't want me. I think it was about the lowest moment that I had ever felt. Now, when your life is interrupted, sometimes things happen that bring you back again. And if you're going to Probus, sorry fellas, the women's Probus this week, I am talking there Tuesday. So if you're a member of Probus, women's, come along. You'll hear the rest of the story and more. The guide to me, there's always a guide in this journey. For him, it was Ananias. Who was it for you? Who was it that invited you perhaps to come to this church? Who was it that invited you to start playing cards after you retired so you'd have something to do? Who was it that put up 100 Christmas trees after she retired? Or did you do that all the time, Brenda, with all your help? Right, our lives change. We come to transform. And a guide comes with us to do that. Oh, I was going to say I was transformed, but that's not me, is it? No, that's Megan. Transformed, changed, brought back again. Somehow, my friends, here I stand, and that is my call. I became ordained and then fulfilled the call. I did 5 more courses in 2 years, and I did a placement for 2 years because God had called me. And that, my friends, was the moment of my ordination. But I'll tell you where I really think that I was called. Right here. Right here. And how funny is it? And I have to mention this because both Doug and I here, but Doug was here before. Do you remember that image that I showed you previous? His mom gave it to us of she and Dawn, her husband, Barb and Dawn, standing with Doug at the front doors of this church as he graduated from Fleming with forestry and parks and recreation. Amazing, isn't it? You see, the path is never straight. We think that this is the path, I'm going to move from here, and this is where I'm going next, over to here. Friends, I thought that I was going to be semi-retired by now, don't you know? I'm working with the horses, maybe doing a bit of preaching. God said, let's go around in a circle, Sharon, and see if we can get you doing other things. And that's why I was called. And it's not a straight line. Today, this image is where Maureen and Andy have a labyrinth. They are gracious, and they have this beautiful labyrinth. Andy can tell you so much about the plants and everything there, and that is an integral part of it all. So a few of us are going to go check it out with these lovely folks today, and we give thanks for that. And after, we're going to put up a sheet, and you're most certainly welcome to try that transforming path at Andy and Maureen's as well. My friends, these paths are everywhere. And it's not just the walk in circles. It's every path leads somewhere. And just pause for a moment and think about your path. Where has God, where have you been interrupted? Who came to help you? Who came to help you change directions, change course? Who was your guide? And then were you transformed? Y'all are sitting there going, I don't think so. Right? Hello? Yes. You're all transformed. Something has happened in your life that has changed a moment, a graceful moment. Nope, that's the end, I think. It's not working. There we go. My friends, Christ has brought a light to you, and it's within you. And know that this sacred path is bubbling up inside every day. And what we think is a tragedy, being unable to speak, having an acquired brain injury, being blinded by a bright light, what we think is terrible, and I can't believe that happened to me, sometimes, my friends, our path changes, and we are directed to a new way of being. May God hold you at all times. May Jesus meet you where you are on that sacred path. And may the Holy Spirit continue to move you down that path, no matter how difficult it is, that you come to that sacred change and transformation. This day and forevermore. That's right. God bless. Amen. Amen. You are held by love, met by love, and moved by love. That may be the beginning of peace. My friend, thank you for spending these few minutes with me today. If this still point, again, has brought you a moment of peace, steadiness, or encouragement, I invite you to share it with someone who may need that same reminder. Not just to share a video, but to share a blessing. Sometimes when we pass along something gentle, hopeful, or grounding, it deepens in us too. We become part of the circle of belonging. We help someone else pause, breathe, and remember that they are not alone. So share it with someone who may need this today. And remember often throughout your day to breathe, to reset, and to rise. Until next time, walk slowly, listen deeply, speak gently, and receive the world with an open heart and a smile. Many blessings.